The morning sun, usually a comforting presence, cast long, ominous shadows across the asphalt as the sleek, dark K9 unit pulled up to the curb. It wasn't just any police car. It was a symbol of authority, unyielding and absolute, now parked directly beside a bright yellow school bus. Children, still buzzing with the last vestiges of morning sleepiness, peered through the tinted windows, their innocent faces a stark contrast to the unfolding scene. A German shepherd, its powerful physique barely contained by the handler's grip, moved with a silent, primal intensity, its nose working furiously. The dog's movements were precise, methodical, as it swept past backpack after backpack, lined up meticulously by anxious school staff. Then it happened. The K9 paused, its head dipping low, a soft but unmistakable growl rumbling deep in its chest. Its focus landed squarely on a small blue backpack adorned with faded space-themed patches. The officers, their faces previously impassive, exchanged a quick, knowing glance. Their expressions tightened, turning grim, and almost in unison. Their hands drifted ever so subtly towards the holsters at their hips. The air crackled with unspoken tension, a silent alarm echoing through the seemingly ordinary school morning. In the quiet, tree-lined suburbs of a small American town, Sarah was navigating the usual morning chaos. A single mother, she worked tirelessly, often juggling 2 jobs to ensure her 10-year-old son, Ethan, had everything he needed. Their modest home, filled with the aroma of burnt toast and lingering childish dreams, was their sanctuary. Ethan was a bright boy, imaginative and curious, often lost in the worlds he created in his mind. He saw magic in the mundane, wonder in the ordinary, a trait Sarah cherished but sometimes worried about. He was a daydreamer, yes, but also incredibly perceptive, with a gentle spirit that belied his age. Their bond was a tapestry woven from shared laughter, late-night stories, and an unspoken understanding that transcended words. Sarah trusted Ethan implicitly, and he, in turn, adored his mother, his biggest champion and closest confidant. This morning, however, felt no different from any other. Ethan, after a quick breakfast of cereal and animated tales of a spaceship he'd built in his dreams, slung his slightly oversized blue backpack onto his shoulders. He mumbled a quick goodbye, his mind already miles away, probably charting intergalactic courses on his walk to the bus stop. Sarah waved from the doorway, a soft smile gracing her lips, before turning to face her own demanding day. The quiet that descended once he was gone was usually a welcome reprieve, a moment to gather her thoughts before diving into her schedule. But today, that peace was shattered, violently and without warning, by a shrill ringing. It was the school. Sarah's heart leaped into her throat even before the frantic voice on the other end delivered the devastating news. There had been an incident. A police K9 unit had been conducting a routine, unannounced search. And Ethan's backpack, her little boy's innocent blue backpack, had triggered an alert. The words hit her with the force of a physical blow, stripping the color from her face, leaving her breathless and cold. What could possibly be in his backpack? What could have caused such a serious reaction? Her mind raced, grappling with the unthinkable, the absurd. The urgency in the school administrator's voice was unmistakable, a cold, clinical tone that left no room for doubt or denial. It was clear this was not a misunderstanding, not a simple case of a misplaced lunch. This was serious. This was a police matter, every fiber of Sarah's being screamed for her to act, to protect her son. The world spun around her, a dizzying blur of fear and disbelief. This story, this terrifying turn of events, demands to be heard. If you're gripped by the raw emotion, the shocking twists, and the fight for innocence against overwhelming odds, then you won't want to miss a single detail of what unravels next. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and join our community as we delve deeper into this gripping true story. The fight for Ethan's future had just begun. A cold dread seized Sarah's heart, tightening its grip with each passing mile to the school. Her hands, usually so steady, trembled on the steering wheel, knuckles white. Worst-case scenarios flashed before her eyes in a terrifying montage. Ethan, her bright, imaginative boy, caught in some incomprehensible web of trouble. The phone call from Principal Jenkins, clipped and formal, had offered no real details, only a chilling urgency regarding a K-9 alert and Ethan's backpack. What could possibly be in his backpack that would warrant police involvement? Her mind raced, a whirlwind of anxieties and half-formed fears. Upon arrival, the school parking lot was eerily quiet, save for a lone police cruiser parked askew. Inside, the hushed hallways amplified the frantic thumping of her own heart. Principal Jenkins met her in the main office, her usually composed demeanor replaced by a strained formality. "Mrs. Davies, thank you for coming so quickly," she began, her tone devoid of its usual warmth. Sarah's stomach clenched. Jenkins explained that it had been a routine, unannounced drug search, a standard procedure from the local K-9 unit. Ethan, she learned, was currently being held in a back office, awaiting questioning. The word questioning echoed in Sarah's ears like a death knell. Her son, just 10 years old, being interrogated by police. It was an unthinkable nightmare. "Ethan is a good boy," Sarah insisted, her voice trembling despite her effort to keep it steady. He doesn't do drugs." Principal Jenkins merely pursed her lips, her gaze flicking nervously towards the office door where Ethan was being held. "Mrs. Davies, our K-9 unit indicated a positive alert on his bag. We have a zero-tolerance policy here." Her concern seemed less about Ethan's well-being and more about the school's reputation, a potential scandal she was desperate to contain. Then, Officer Miller emerged from the office, a stern, imposing figure in uniform, his eyes, cold and unwavering, fixed on Sarah. He held Ethan's backpack, a familiar worn canvas bag, as if it were a biohazard. "Mrs. Davies," he stated, his voice flat and authoritative, "the K-9 has a 95% accuracy rate. We have probable cause to believe there may be illicit substances in your son's possession." There was no room for doubt in his voice, no flicker of empathy. He saw only the K-9's alert, not the innocent boy behind the bag. Sarah tried to explain Ethan's eccentricities, his fascination with collecting strange objects, his boundless imagination. "He loves to collect things, officer. Rocks, leaves, unusual scraps. He's always creating little potions from things he finds in the woods. It's a game. He's just a child," she pleaded, her voice rising in desperation. But her words seemed to bounce off a wall of impenetrable procedure and unwavering suspicion. Principal Jenkins interjected, reminding Sarah of the school's strict code of conduct and the need to cooperate fully with the authorities. Officer Miller simply shook his head. "Ma'am, with all due respect, we have an indication. We need to follow protocol." He wasn't listening to her maternal pleas. He was following a script, an unwavering adherence to rules that left no space for nuance or understanding. Sarah felt a profound sense of isolation wash over her. She was alone against the combined forces of the school's bureaucracy and the officer's rigid authority. Her son, her beloved Ethan, was trapped in the middle, and she felt utterly helpless to protect him. The air in the office grew heavy with unspoken accusations and the dreadful weight of a system that seemed intent on proving guilt rather than uncovering truth. Every attempt to inject logic or human understanding into the situation was met with cold, unyielding procedure. Her heart ached for Ethan, trapped in a situation he surely couldn't comprehend, his innocence being questioned by adults who refused to see past a dog's bark. The drug dog's strong indication on Ethan's backpack was a damning piece of evidence in the eyes of the police, and increasingly, the school administration. Whispers began to ripple through the hallways, reaching Sarah even as she desperately tried to comprehend the unfolding nightmare. Other parents, picking up their own children, cast quick, furtive glances her way, their faces a mixture of pity and thinly veiled judgment. The rumors, no doubt fueled by the K-9 unit's presence and the sight of a young boy being questioned, were already taking root, painting Ethan as something he simply wasn't. Sarah struggled immensely to maintain her composure, feeling the suffocating weight of suspicion pressing down on them both. Every instinct screamed at her to defend her son, to shield him from this growing tide of misunderstanding and prejudice. She knew Ethan, knew his innocent heart and his wildly imaginative spirit, and the idea of him being involved with anything illicit was not just absurd, it was a cruel mockery of his very nature. Officer Miller, his expression unyielding, brought the conversation back to the grim reality of the situation. He informed Sarah, with a chilling lack of emotion, that depending on what was found inside Ethan's backpack, her 10-year-old son could potentially face serious legal charges. The words hung heavy in the air, each one a hammer blow against Sarah's already fractured sense of security. Despite his age, the legal system could still hold him accountable, and the ramifications could be life-altering. Her heart sank like a stone in a bottomless well. A conviction, even for a minor drug-related offense, could shadow Ethan for years, impacting his educational opportunities, his future career, and his ability to simply live a normal life. The sheer magnitude of the situation, the terrifying potential impact on her bright, curious boy, was almost too much to bear. She felt a cold dread seep into her bones, an icy fear that threatened to paralyze her entirely. This wasn't just about a school incident anymore. This was about Ethan's entire future hanging precariously in the balance. Leaving the sterile, unforgiving environment of the school, Sarah returned home, the quiet house feeling strangely vacant without Ethan's usual chatter. Her mind, however, was anything but quiet. It was a frenzied kaleidoscope of memories and desperate thoughts. She began a frantic, almost obsessive, search for answers, trying to retrace every step Ethan had taken that morning, every detail of his routine. Was there anything unusual he might have packed? A forgotten toy, a science project, a book? She meticulously scoured his room, looking for any clue, any hint that could explain the K-9's reaction. The process was agonizing, a painful journey through self-doubt and fear. Had she missed something? Had she been too preoccupied with work, too tired to notice a subtle change in his behavior, a new friend, a strange habit? The questions gnawed at her, each one a barb in her already wounded heart. She questioned her parenting, her attentiveness, her ability to protect the one person who mattered most in her life. The image of Officer Miller's stern face, the principal's tight-lipped disapproval, and the judging eyes of other parents flashed in her mind, amplifying her desperate need to understand and, more importantly, to clear Ethan's name. This desperate search wasn't just for answers. It was a mother's primal cry for her child's innocence. The agonizing wait stretched into what felt like an eternity, each ticking second amplifying Sarah's dread. Finally, With Sarah present, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, the officers prepared to open Ethan's backpack. The sterile fluorescent lights of the small, nondescript room seemed to hum with the palpable tension. Officer Miller stood by, a resolute, almost smug expression on his face, his belief in the K-9's infallible judgment unwavering. He observed Sarah with an air of clinical detachment, as if watching a predictable drama unfold. Sarah, on the other hand, braced herself, her knuckles white as she involuntarily clenched her fists, still clinging to a sliver of desperate hope that this entire nightmare was some elaborate misunderstanding, a cruel joke played by fate. She scanned the faces of the other officers, searching for any flicker of empathy, but found only professional stoicism. With a deliberate movement, one of the officers unzipped the main compartment of the colorful, child-sized backpack. Sarah's breath hitched in her throat, her eyes fixed on the opening flap. Instead of the neatly organized school supplies she expected, or the illicit substances the K-9 had supposedly detected, a collection of truly bizarre items tumbled into view. There were several smooth, oddly shaped rocks, some with glittering inclusions, others deeply veined with earthy tones. Their scent was distinct, a damp, mineral-rich aroma that seemed to fill the small room. Interspersed among the rocks were small bundles of dried plants, their brittle leaves rustling softly as they were handled. These, too, carried a strong, almost pungent, natural smell, reminiscent of a forest floor after a rainstorm, but somehow more concentrated, more herbaceous. Finally, the officer pulled out a sealed plastic bag. Inside, a strange, dark, pasty mixture squished against the clear plastic, emitting an even stronger, almost medicinal, but undeniably natural odor. It looked like something concocted in a child's backyard laboratory, not evidence of criminal activity. Ethan, in his boundless imagination, had been collecting what he earnestly believed were treasures from a local patch of woods near their home, convinced they held a magical essence. He had spent hours meticulously gathering these components, believing them to be essential ingredients for his secret projects. Officer Miller's confident demeanor visibly faltered. The smug certainty that had previously etched his features began to dissolve, replaced by a flicker of surprise, then outright confusion. His gaze darted from the innocent, yet oddly fragrant contents of the bag to the K-9 handler, a silent question in his eyes. The initial conviction of drug possession, so absolute just moments before, undeniably evaporated, leaving behind an uncomfortable void of uncertainty. While he still maintained a wary, suspicious glint, the immediate threat of serious charges based on the K-9's alert seemed to dissipate before their very eyes. The K-9 handler, a grizzled veteran with years of experience, stepped forward, a slight furrow in his brow. He knelt, taking a cautious sniff of the opened backpack's contents. He then explained, his voice low and professional, that highly concentrated natural substances, especially those with strong organic compounds, could indeed sometimes trigger an alert, particularly if the dog's training encompassed a wide spectrum of scents. He elaborated on how certain plant compounds, particularly those with strong terpenes, could mimic or cross-react with the chemical signatures of some controlled substances, especially if the dog was highly sensitive and trained to detect a broad range of illicit items. It was a technical explanation, but it provided a plausible, almost undeniable reason for the apparent false positive. The air in the room, previously thick with accusation, slowly began to lighten, replaced by a collective, albeit grudging, acceptance of the unexpected reality. Sarah, watching this shift in dynamics, felt a faint stir of relief, a fragile hope beginning to bloom amidst the lingering fear. With Sarah present, the officers finally initiated the opening of Ethan's backpack, the zipper's rasp cutting through the suffocating silence of the principal's office. The tension in the small room was a living, breathing entity, pressing in on everyone. Officer Miller stood with an air of unyielding confidence, his stance proclaiming his unwavering faith in the K-9's infallible judgment. He fully expected to uncover the incriminating evidence that would validate his suspicions. Sarah, her knuckles white as she clutched her hands together, braced herself for the worst imaginable outcome, yet a fragile sliver of hope, almost defiant in its persistence, flickered within her. She desperately clung to the belief that there had to be an explanation, an innocent one, for this terrifying ordeal. Her gaze was fixed on the backpack, her breath held captive in her chest, as if exhaling would irrevocably seal her son's fate. The discovery, however, was a jarring subversion of all expectations. Instead of the illicit narcotics Officer Miller had so confidently predicted, the officers, their expressions shifting from expectation to bewilderment, found a curious collection of items. There were several strange, earthy-smelling rocks, irregular in shape and varying in color, their surfaces rough to the touch. Tucked alongside them were small bundles of dried plants, their brittle leaves and stems emitting a faint, unfamiliar aroma that was undeniably potent. And, most puzzling of all, a sealed plastic bag contained what appeared to be a homemade, non-toxic, but distinctly pungent mixture. It was a concoction of pulverized leaves, fine soil, and tiny, glittering pebbles, all mixed into a paste that had hardened. Ethan, in his boundless, youthful imagination, had been meticulously collecting these treasures from a secluded part of the local forest, genuinely believing them to possess magical properties. He was convinced they were essential ingredients for his grand project. Officer Miller's reaction was immediate and palpable. He was visibly taken aback, his usually stoic demeanor cracking under the weight of the unexpected revelation. The assured certainty that had defined his posture moments before now wavered, replaced by a flicker of doubt in his eyes. The initial conviction of drug possession, which had fueled his stern interrogation and unwavering resolve, was gone, replaced by a confused frown. He still looked suspicious, his gaze lingering on the peculiar contents, clearly struggling to reconcile the K-9's strong alert with the current display of what appeared to be nothing more than a child's imaginative playthings. At this critical juncture, the K-9 handler, a burly officer with a more empathetic expression, stepped forward to offer a professional explanation. He clarified that some highly concentrated natural substances, particularly certain roots, fungi, and potent botanicals, could indeed trigger an alert in a specially trained dog. He explained that if a K-9 was rigorously trained on a wide spectrum of scents, including those less conventional, a strong enough concentration of certain organic compounds could produce a false positive. It was an unforeseen, yet entirely plausible, scientific explanation that began to chip away at the fortress of suspicion. Ethan, now gently brought back into the room, his eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and a hint of fear, innocently began to explain his magic potion project. His voice, small but steady, described how he had been inspired by a fantasy adventure book he was avidly reading, a tale filled with ancient forests and mythical creatures. He recounted with unwavering sincerity his earnest attempts to create a potent concoction that would allow him to talk to animals, convinced that the unique rocks and dried plants he had carefully gathered held special, mystical powers. His explanation, delivered with the guileless honesty only a 10-year-old can possess, was so utterly sincere and naive that it began to chip away at the last vestiges of skepticism lingering in the adults' minds. The whimsical nature of his quest, the pure, unadulterated belief in magic, was undeniably disarming. A wave of profound, soul-deep relief washed over Sarah, so powerful it almost buckled her knees. The suffocating fear that had gripped her for hours finally receded, replaced by an overwhelming sense of gratitude that her son's innocence had been unequivocally proven. But this immense relief was swiftly followed by a surge of righteous anger, hot and fierce. Her gentle, imaginative son had been subjected to such an utterly traumatic ordeal, made to feel like a criminal, and she, his mother, had been forced into a harrowing position, made to doubt his very character, all over a harmless, childish fantasy. Her voice, though trembling slightly with residual emotion, gained strength as she demanded a sincere apology. She wanted a thorough explanation for the overzealous, negligent actions that had caused such immense distress and humiliation to her innocent child. Principal Jenkins, her face a mask of practiced concern, now realized the monumental potential for a public relations nightmare, a scandal that could severely tarnish the school's esteemed reputation. Her earlier rigid, unyielding demeanor softened considerably as she swiftly moved into damage control mode, attempting to smoothly gloss over the incident. She tried to downplay the entire ordeal, vaguely praising the vigilance of the K-9 unit, a hollow platitude that grated on Sarah's raw nerves. The principal's superficial attempts to placate and minimize the gravity of what had transpired, her focus clearly on protecting the school's image rather than acknowledging the harm inflicted, only served to further fuel Sarah's irritation and anger. Her eyes narrowed as she watched the principal, a cold determination settling in her heart. This was far from over. The dust barely settled from the baffling incident before whispers began to spread like wildfire through the community. News of the K-9 alert, Ethan's backpack, and the initial police questioning, though twisted and embellished through countless retellings, quickly became the talk of the town. Sarah and Ethan, unwittingly, found themselves thrust into the unwelcome spotlight of public opinion. Some parents, perhaps remembering their own children's eccentricities, expressed a quiet relief, understanding the potential for misunderstanding. Others, however, remained fiercely distrustful, their initial judgments hardening into conviction, convinced there had to be more to the story than a simple mix-up. The weight of this unwanted attention settled heavily on Sarah, who felt scrutinized everywhere she went, each glance a silent judgment. Ethan, too, navigated the school hallways with a new self-consciousness, aware of the sidelong glances and hushed conversations whenever he passed. Despite the official explanation, the shadow of suspicion, once cast, proved difficult to fully dispel. Meanwhile, Officer Miller, a man who prided himself on his unwavering adherence to protocol and the infallible judgment of his K-9 partner, found himself grappling with an unsettling internal conflict. The K-9 unit was the cornerstone of drug enforcement, a symbol of efficiency and precision. Its reliability was a point of deep professional pride for him and his team. Yet, the stark innocence of a 10-year-old boy, whose contraband turned out to be nothing more than rocks and dried plants, directly challenged his rigid black-and-white view of justice. How could a tool he trusted so implicitly have been so profoundly mistaken? And what did that mean for the other instances where an alert had led to more severe outcomes? The incident with Ethan forced him to confront the uncomfortable reality of fallibility, not just in technology, but in the systems and assumptions built around it. He began to reflect more deeply than ever before on the ethical implications of a false positive and the devastating, unquantifiable impact it could have on an innocent life, especially a young one. the image of Ethan's wide, earnest eyes, explaining his magic potion, was a persistent, disquieting whisper in his conscience. The pressure from the school and the lingering community scrutiny began to wear on Sarah. While the immediate danger to Ethan had passed, the emotional scars and the violation of his rights remained. She firmly believed that no child should ever have to endure such a terrifying ordeal, or have their innocence questioned so harshly over something so benign. The casual disregard for Ethan's well-being, the rush to judgment, and the failure of the system to protect him fueled a new resolve within her. She knew she couldn't simply let the incident fade away as a regrettable misunderstanding. This wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It was about ensuring that such an overzealous and damaging procedure wouldn't be inflicted upon another unsuspecting child. With a renewed sense of purpose, Sarah decided to seek external support. She reached out to a legal advocate specializing in civil liberties and educational rights, determined to explore every avenue to hold the responsible parties accountable and to prevent similar incidents from ever happening again. Her fight for Ethan's dignity and the rights of all children was far from over. She meticulously gathered every piece of information, every detail of the traumatizing day, preparing to bravely stand against the very institutions that had failed her son. Armed with meticulous notes and the steadfast counsel of an experienced legal advocate, Sarah braced herself for the inevitable confrontation with the school board. The meeting room, usually reserved for mundane administrative discussions, felt charged with an almost palpable tension. Sarah, seated beside her lawyer, presented her case with a quiet but unwavering conviction. She articulated the egregious lack of discretion employed during the K-9 search, painting a vivid picture of the sheer terror inflicted upon her 10-year-old son, Ethan. Her voice, though steady, conveyed the deep emotional scar left by the incident, emphasizing how Ethan's innocent world had been irrevocably shaken by adult suspicion and a rigid, unthinking process. She argued passionately for the inherent need for more nuanced policies regarding K-9 searches, particularly when involving impressionable young children who might not fully grasp the implications of such invasive procedures. She underscored the violation of Ethan's privacy and the psychological distress caused, not just by the initial alarm, but by the lingering shame and scrutiny from his peers and teachers. This was not merely about her son, she asserted, but about safeguarding the rights and emotional well-being of every student within the district. Then, to the astonishment of many in the room, Officer Miller rose to speak. His presence was unexpected, a stark departure from the usual protocol where law enforcement typically avoided direct involvement in school board deliberations. He approached the podium with a gravitas that commanded attention, his usual stern demeanor softened by a visible layer of introspection. He didn't shy away from the truth. In a clear, resonant voice, he acknowledged the K-9's inherent fallibility, admitting that even the most meticulously trained animals could register false positives, especially with the unexpected variables presented by a child's backpack full of earthy treasures. More profoundly, he expressed genuine regret for the profound distress caused to Ethan and, by extension, to Sarah and their family. It was a moment of stark honesty and humility that cut through the bureaucratic formality of the meeting. He went on to propose specific revised protocols for K-9 searches in schools, advocating for a crucial balance between security measures and the protection of student welfare. He stressed the paramount importance of incorporating human judgment and sensitivity into the process, suggesting that an initial, less invasive assessment by a human officer should precede a full K-9 deployment, especially when dealing with young children. This unexpected testimony from a man once so rigidly dedicated to the K-9's absolute authority shifted the very atmosphere of the room. The climax of the emotionally charged meeting arrived as the school board members, visibly moved by Sarah's eloquent appeal and Officer Miller's candid and unexpected admission, began to confer amongst themselves. The weight of mounting public pressure, stoked by Sarah's strategic outreach and the legal advocate's careful orchestration, left them with little room for complacency. Officer Miller's testimony, coming from an authority figure dedicated to law enforcement, lent an undeniable credibility to Sarah's assertions. Faced with the undeniable evidence of systemic flaws and the potential for significant legal repercussions, the board's collective resistance began to crumble. They declared, after a short but intense deliberation, their unanimous decision to open a comprehensive reevaluation of their existing K-9 search policies. This pivotal moment, while not a complete resolution, represented an undeniable and significant victory for Sarah. It was a crucial, hard-won first step towards preventing future similar incidents, a testament to her courage and persistence in fighting for what was right, not just for Ethan, but for every child who might otherwise fall victim to an overly zealous application of policy without humanity. The journey was not over, but the path towards genuine change had been decisively opened. The school board, having faced the mounting pressure from Sarah's legal counsel and the unexpected sincere testimony from Officer Miller, finally capitulated. A comprehensive reevaluation of their K-9 search policies was not just initiated, but swiftly concluded. The new protocols were a significant victory, mandating vastly improved communication channels with parents, ensuring parental consent was sought whenever possible, and implementing more stringent verification processes before any inquiry escalated to the level Ethan had experienced. They recognized the inherent fallibility of even the most sophisticated tools when applied without human judgment and empathy. A public statement was issued, a formal apology extended to Ethan and Sarah, acknowledging the distress and trauma caused by the incident and promising a more considerate approach moving forward. This public admission of fault eased some of the communal tension, though genuine trust would undoubtedly take time to rebuild. Officer Miller, having undergone a profound shift in perspective, sought out Sarah and Ethan personally. Standing before them, away from the formalities of the board meeting, he offered a heartfelt, unreserved apology. His voice was low, tinged with genuine regret, as he explained how the K-9's alert, while technically correct in identifying a unique scent, had been misinterpreted within a system that prioritized suspicion over nuance. He spoke of his own rigid adherence to procedure and the blind spots it had created, admitting that he had failed to consider the human cost of his actions. This personal act of humility and growth deeply impacted Sarah, showing a man capable of acknowledging his mistakes and learning from them. For Ethan, it was a moment of quiet validation. The stern officer who had once seemed so formidable now appeared genuinely remorseful. Ethan, though still carrying the memory of that terrifying day, began to heal. The ordeal, while traumatic, had inadvertently taught him a valuable, if harsh, lesson about the importance of context, the complexities of adult systems, and how easily misunderstandings could arise from innocent actions. He understood now that his magic potion could be perceived very differently by others, and while it didn't dim his imagination, it certainly tempered his approach to sharing his secret treasures. His bond with Sarah, already unbreakable, had forged into something even stronger, tempered by shared adversity. Sarah, in turn, found a renewed sense of purpose. Her fight had not just been for her son, but for a systemic change, a rectification that would hopefully shield other children from similar experiences. The initial helplessness had transformed into empowerment, a testament to a mother's fierce love and unwavering determination. The incident, rather than breaking them, had highlighted the profound importance of believing in the innocence of children and the necessity of questioning authority when it oversteps its bounds. It was a stark reminder that true justice often demanded more than just following rules. It required empathy, discernment, and the courage to admit when one was wrong. This extraordinary journey, fraught with misunderstanding and eventual redemption, serves as a powerful reminder for us all. It compels us to question assumptions, to stand up for what is right, and to understand that truth can emerge from the most unexpected of places, often through the simplest, most innocent explanations. What began as a terrifying moment on a school bus blossomed into a testament to resilience and the pursuit of fairness. We urge you to absorb this lesson, to reflect on its implications, and to continue engaging with stories that challenge perceptions. If this narrative resonated with you, if it sparked a thought or stirred an emotion, please consider subscribing to our channel, liking this video, and sharing it with your friends and family. Your support helps us bring more compelling, true-to-life stories that shed light on the often hidden aspects of our world. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you won't miss our next video, where we'll unravel another captivating tale that promises to keep you on the edge of your seat.